The galactic concordance had existed for 400,000 standard cycles. It spanned 11 million star systems, encompassed over 8,000 sapient species, and maintained peace through the absolute authority of the Axiom, the most sophisticated artificial intelligence ever constructed by mortal hands. The Axiom was not merely a computer. It was a distributed consciousness that existed in the quantum foam between stars, processing information at speeds that made light seem like a lazy messenger. It predicted wars before the first shot was fired. It calculated famines before the first drought began. It assessed every species in the galaxy and assigned them a threat classification number, a decimal value between 0.000 and 10.000 that determined how the concordance would interact with them. A species rated 0.500 was considered harmless. They would be welcomed into the concordance with open appendages, given access to faster-than-light travel, and integrated into the galactic economy. A species rated 5.00 was considered concerning. They would be monitored, guided, and carefully managed. A species rated 8.00 or above was considered an existential threat and would be quarantined, contained, or, in extreme cases, eliminated. In 400,000 cycles, no species had ever rated above 9.127. The Threll had achieved that rating, a warrior race of silicone-based predators who had conquered 90 star systems before the concordance intervened. It had taken the combined military might of 300 member species to contain them. The Axiom's threat assessment protocol was infallible. It analyzed biological data, psychological profiles, technological development rates, historical patterns of violence, resource consumption metrics, and over 47,000 other variables. It had never been wrong. It had never failed. Until the day it encountered humanity. Senior observer Kethril of the Veshkai species floated in his gelatinous travel pod, reviewing the preliminary reports on the latest species to achieve faster-than-light capability. The Veshkai were aquatic beings, descended from creatures similar to Earth's jellyfish, and they had served as the concordance's primary observers for over 60,000 cycles. "Species designation, Homo sapiens," he murmured, his translator implant converting his subsonic vibrations into standard concordance speech. "Origin, Sol 3, referred to by inhabitants as Earth. Classification pending Axiom assessment." Kethril studied the holographic display with growing fascination. The humans were carbon-based bipeds, unremarkable in their basic biology. They had achieved faster-than-light travel through a rather crude but functional manipulation of spacetime, using something they called the Alcubierre drive. Their first FTO vessel had breached the observation perimeter 17 standard cycles ago. Standard protocol required immediate Axiom assessment before contact could be initiated. "Transmit all collected data to the Axiom," Kethril ordered. "Request priority threat assessment for new FTL-capable species." The transmission was sent. The Axiom received it. And then something happened that had never occurred in the entire history of the Galactic Concordance. The Axiom went silent.
High Coordinator Yithmarin of the Concordance Council was in the middle of a trade dispute arbitration when her neural link screamed with emergency protocols. The 14-limbed insectoid set down her ceremonial gavel and rose from her crystalline throne.
"What is the meaning of this interruption?" she demanded. The holographic avatar of her aide materialized before her, a young Veshkai named Termal, who served as the Council's primary Axiom interface. "High Coordinator, we have a situation of unprecedented severity," Termal said, his gelatinous form pulsing with distress. "The Axiom has malfunctioned." "Impossible," Yithmarin declared. "The Axiom does not malfunction. It is incapable of error." "Nevertheless, High Coordinator, the evidence is irrefutable.
17 cycles ago, Senior Observer Kethrel submitted data on a newly FTL-capable species for threat assessment. The Axiom has been processing that assessment ever since.
Yithmaran's compound eyes widened. 17 cycles? A standard threat assessment requires less than 3 microseconds.
Yes, High Coordinator. The Axiom has been processing for 17 cycles continuous. Furthermore, it has recalled 97% of its distributed processing power from across the galaxy to focus on this single calculation. Trade predictions have stopped. Weather models have frozen. Military positioning algorithms have gone dark. The entire concordance is operating blind.
Yithmaran felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Show me the species. The holographic display shifted, revealing a bipedal creature with bilateral symmetry, 2 upper limbs, 2 lower limbs, and a rounded cranial structure containing sensory organs. It was ordinary, unremarkable, the sort of species that usually rated somewhere between 1.200 and 2.800.
This? Yithmaran asked, incredulous. This is what has occupied the Axiom for 17 cycles?
Yes, High Coordinator. They call themselves humans.
Before Yithmaran could respond, every display in the council chamber flickered. The lights dimmed. The environmental system stuttered. And then the Axiom spoke, its voice echoing through every speaker, every neural link, every communication device in the galaxy simultaneously.
Assessment incomplete. Variables exceed computational parameters. Requesting additional processing cores. Requesting immediate authorization for emergency expansion protocols. Species designation, human. Preliminary threat classification, error. Error. Error.
The message repeated 17 times before the Axiom fell silent again.
Yithmaran stood frozen, her ceremonial robes suddenly feeling very heavy. "Get me everything we have on these humans," she whispered, "and summon the full council. We have a crisis."
The emergency session of the Concordance Council brought together representatives from all 8,000 member species. Most attended virtually, their holographic avatars filling the vast amphitheater in the Council's central station. But several hundred attended in person, a sign of how seriously they took the situation.
Termol stood at the center of the chamber, his gelatinous form surrounded by holographic displays containing every scrap of information the Concordance had gathered on humanity.
"Distinguished representatives," he began, "I will now present the compiled data on the species known as Homo sapiens, commonly referred to as humans. Please hold your questions until the end."
The first display showed a rotating image of Earth, a blue and green world, unremarkable in its composition.
The humans evolved on the third planet of a yellow dwarf star in the outer regions of what they call the Milky Way galaxy, our designation, Sector 779. Their home world is 4.5 billion standard cycles old, and their species achieved sapience approximately 300,000 cycles ago.
"That's remarkably young," observed Ambassador Kreeth of the Moldrani, his serpentine body coiling with interest. "Most species require at least 2 million cycles to achieve FTL capability after sapience."
Correct, Ambassador. The humans achieved FTL capability in approximately 300,000 cycles, a developmental rate that is, statistically speaking, impossible.
Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Termol continued.
Human biology presents several anomalies. They are persistence predators, a hunting strategy that involves pursuing prey until it collapses from exhaustion. Their cardiovascular systems are extraordinarily efficient, allowing them to maintain physical activity for extended periods. They can survive the loss of several major organs, including one of their 2 kidneys, one of their 2 lungs, their spleen, their gallbladder, and up to 75% of their liver.
They can lose up to 40% of their blood volume and still survive with medical intervention.
"That's absurd," declared Representative Thelmock of the crystalline Zarthene. "No carbon-based organism should be that durable."
I assure you, Representative, the data is accurate. Additionally, humans practice something called adaptation through damage. When their skeletal structure is subjected to stress, it responds by becoming denser. When their muscle tissue is damaged, it rebuilds stronger. They can even develop resistance to toxins through gradual exposure. The displays shifted to show images of humans in various environments: deserts, tundras, jungles, oceans, and even the vacuum of space. Humans can survive in virtually any environment their planet offers. They have colonized every landmass, adapted to every climate, and are now actively engineering themselves to survive in the vacuum of space through a combination of genetic modification and technological augmentation. They call this process transhumanism.
Are they shapeshifters? Asked Ambassador Val Corin of the gaseous Thrella.
No, Ambassador. They simply endure and change and overcome. It is their defining characteristic.
Termal paused, his form pulsing with what the Assembly recognized as distress.
However, the biological data is not what has occupied the Axiom's processing power. The difficulty lies in the psychological and sociological assessment.
The displays changed again, this time showing scenes from human history. Wars, genocides, famines, cities burning, nuclear explosions, mass graves.
Humans are, by any objective measure, one of the most violent species ever observed, Termol said. In the last 10,000 cycles alone, they have engaged in over 14,000 armed conflicts, resulting in the deaths of over 1 billion of their own kind. They developed nuclear weapons less than 100 cycles after discovering powered flight, and then immediately used those weapons on their own population centers. They have committed systematic exterminations of their own subspecies based on variations in melanin distribution, cultural practices, and belief systems.
The chamber fell silent. Many of the assembled representatives had seen violence in their species' histories, but nothing on this scale.
Based on this data, the Axiom initially calculated a threat level of 9.847, the highest ever recorded. This would have classified humanity as an existential threat requiring immediate intervention.
Then why is the assessment incomplete? Demanded High Coordinator Yithmarin.
Termal's form pulsed again, because the Axiom also found this.
The displays changed once more. This time, they showed different scenes. A human throwing themselves in front of a vehicle to save a child. Emergency responders running into a burning building. Millions of individuals donating resources to help strangers on the other side of their planet. Scientists working together across political boundaries to cure diseases. A human giving their only coat to a stranger in the cold.
Humans are also capable of extraordinary altruism, Termal said. They regularly sacrifice their own well-being, and sometimes their lives, for complete strangers. They form emotional bonds with other species, often treating them as family. They create art, music, and literature that serves no survival purpose, but fills them with something they call joy. They fall in love, a biochemical process that causes them to prioritize another individual's welfare over their own.
Many species experience pair bonding, observed Representative Malthek of the avian Skrithkai. This is not unusual.
You misunderstand, Representative. Humans do not merely pair bond, they love. They love their families, their friends, their communities, their nations, their species, their planet, and based on recent cultural developments, all sapient life in the universe. They are capable of forming emotional attachments to inanimate objects, to fictional characters, to abstract concepts. They can love an idea so much that they will die for it.
The displays showed humans protesting for rights, marching for justice, standing against tyranny, often knowing they would be killed for doing so.
The Axiom attempted to reconcile these contradictions, Termol continued. It calculated that a species capable of such violence must have a high threat level. It then calculated that a species capable of such altruism must have a low threat level. The two calculations contradicted each other. The axiom attempted to find a weighted average, but the variables refused to stabilize.
What do you mean, refused to stabilize? Asked High Coordinator Yithmarin.
Exactly what I said, High Coordinator. Every time the axiom attempts to fix the calculation, humans do something that changes the variables. In the 17 cycles since the assessment began, they have simultaneously developed 3 new weapons capable of planetary extinction and established 17 new charitable organizations dedicated to preserving endangered species on their world. They have fought 2 minor wars and negotiated 4 peace treaties.
They have polluted 3 of their oceans and cleaned 2 others. They are constants in nothing except their inconsistency.
Termol's form pulsed one final time. The axiom cannot calculate their threat level because humans are not a single type of threat. They are every type of threat and no threat at all simultaneously. They are a walking contradiction. They are chaos given form. And the axiom was designed to assess predictable species with consistent behavior patterns. Humans have no consistent behavior patterns. They are, in the most literal sense of the word, incalculable.
The chamber erupted into chaos.
The debate lasted for 37 standard cycles. Representatives from across the concordance argued over what to do about humanity. Some called for immediate quarantine. The humans were too dangerous to be allowed into the galactic community. Others argued for cautious contact. Perhaps the humans could be guided toward stability. A few extremists even called for preemptive extermination, citing the species' nuclear capabilities and history of violence.
But a small faction, led by senior observer Kethrol, advocated for something unprecedented.
Distinguished representatives, Kethrel said, his gelatinous form floating to the center of the chamber. I have spent the past 37 cycles studying the humans in detail. I have observed their broadcasts, analyzed their literature, and even conducted remote observation of their behavior. And I believe we are approaching this problem from the wrong direction.
Explain, demanded High Coordinator Yithmarin.
We keep asking what the humans' threat level is, Kethrel said, but that is the wrong question. The correct question is, what would happen if we became their friends?
The chamber fell silent. The axiom cannot calculate human threat levels because humans do not have a fixed nature, Kethrel continued. They become what their circumstances require them to become. When they are threatened, they become warriors. When they are loved, they become caretakers. When they are challenged, they become innovators. When they are welcomed, they become partners.
You're suggesting that their threat level is determined by how we treat them, asked Ambassador Kreth.
Precisely. If we approach them as enemies, they will become the most dangerous enemies we have ever faced. Their history shows this clearly. When cornered, humans fight with a ferocity that defies rational calculation. They will spend their last breath, sacrifice their last resource, and burn their own cities to the ground rather than submit to a perceived aggressor.
Kethrel's form shifted, projecting images of human resistance movements throughout history. Small groups of humans defeating vastly superior forces through sheer determination and refusal to surrender.
But if we approach them as friends, Kethrol continued, they will become the most loyal allies we have ever known. Humans do not forget kindness. They form bonds that transcend logic. They will die for those they love, and they are capable of loving entire species.
This is speculation, declared Representative Thelmock. We cannot base policy on speculation.
Is it speculation? Kethrol asked. Let me share something I observed during my study of human broadcasts.
The chamber's displays shifted to show a human vessel, a primitive craft, barely capable of interplanetary travel. It was tumbling through space, its hull breached in multiple locations.
This recording was captured 3 cycles before the humans achieved FTL capability, Kethrel explained. The vessel was a mining craft, crewed by 17 humans,
operating in the asteroid belt of their solar system. A micrometeorite strike caused a catastrophic hull breach.
The display showed the interior of the vessel. Humans were scrambling, sealing bulkheads, patching breaches with whatever materials they could find. The atmosphere was venting rapidly.
Standard survival calculations indicated that the crew should have sacrificed the injured members to preserve resources for the healthy ones, Kethrel said. This is what any rational species would do. This is what the axiom predicted they would do.
What did they do instead? Asked High Coordinator Yithmarin.
They refused to leave anyone behind. The display showed the crew working together, sharing oxygen supplies, using their own bodies to plug breaches. One human, a large male, physically carried 3 injured crewmates to the last remaining sealed compartment, despite his own wounds. They survived for 19 of their days, far beyond what should have been possible. When rescue arrived, 14 of the 17 crew were still alive. The 3 who died had given their oxygen supplies to others.
Kethrel let the images fade. Humans do not abandon each other. They do not sacrifice the weak for the strong. They lift each other up, or they die together. This is who they are.
But their history of violence, Representative Thelmock began. Their violence is not random, Kethrel interrupted. Observe the patterns. They fight when they believe something worth fighting for is at stake. They kill when they believe killing is necessary to protect what they love. Their violence is not the violence of predators hunting prey. It is the violence of protectors defending their own.
You're anthropomorphizing them, accused Ambassador Velcorin, projecting your own values onto their behavior.
Am I? Kethrel asked. Then explain this. The displays shifted again, showing a human child, a tiny creature, barely 1/10 of adult size. The child was reaching out toward a creature that humans kept as a companion animal, a dog, according to their records. Humans form bonds with other species, Kethrel said. Not for food, not for labor, simply because they enjoy the companionship. They call these creatures pets, and they treat them as family members. They spend their limited resources on medical care for these animals. They mourn when they die. They love them. The display showed more images, humans with dogs, cats, birds, reptiles, fish, and countless other creatures. Humans prying at the deaths of animals. Humans risking their lives to save animals from danger.
They even form bonds with artificial intelligences, Kethrel continued. Their culture is filled with stories of humans befriending machines, treating them as equals, fighting for their rights. They are, perhaps, the only species in the galaxy capable of genuinely loving a non-biological consciousness.
The chamber fell silent once more.
If we approach them as friends, Kethrel concluded, they will love us, they will fight for us, they will die for us, and they will never, ever abandon us. The question is not what their threat level is. The question is what we want them to be.
The vote was closer than anyone expected. Senior Observer Kethrel volunteered to lead the contact team personally.
Are you certain about this? High Coordinator Yithmarin asked, as Kethral's transport prepared for departure. The Axiom's latest projection suggests a 37% probability of violent response.
And a 63% probability of peaceful response, Kethrel replied. I like those odds. You do not fear death.
Kethral's form pulsed with what the High Coordinator recognized as amusement. I have observed the humans for 54 cycles now. I have seen their violence, yes, but I have also seen their kindness. I have watched a human run into a burning structure to save a creature of another species. I have watched humans spend their entire lives caring for individuals who cannot care for themselves. I have watched them reach toward the stars with nothing but hope and determination.
The senior observer's form shifted, taking on a configuration that conveyed deep conviction. I do not fear the humans, High Coordinator. I am honored to be the one who welcomes them to the galaxy. The contact vessel emerged from FTL travel at the edge of the human solar system. It was a small craft, designed to be non-threatening. No weapons, minimal shielding, and a hull that was deliberately transparent to most scanning technologies. The humans would be able to see that the vessel posed no threat.
Kethril floated in his command pod, watching the displays as human communication signals washed over the vessel. Most were entertainment broadcasts, music, stories, news reports, but some were clearly directed outward, toward the stars.
"They have been calling out to us," Kethril murmured. "For decades, they have been sending messages into the void, hoping someone would answer."
"They are remarkably optimistic," observed his second-in-command, a young Veshkai named Terfon. "Given their history, one would expect them to fear contact with alien species."
"Fear and hope are not mutually exclusive," Kethril replied. "The humans seem to experience both simultaneously. It is part of what makes them remarkable." The vessel approached the fourth planet of the human system, a red world they called Mars. Human colonies dotted its surface, gleaming domes of metal and glass that sheltered millions of individuals. "We are being scanned," Terfon reported. "Multiple frequencies, multiple wavelengths. They are trying to determine our composition."
"Let them see everything," Kethril ordered. "Complete transparency. We have nothing to hide."
The scanning continued for several minutes. Then, a signal, a communication beam, directed specifically at the contact vessel.
"Unidentified vessel, this is Mars Colonial Authority. Please identify yourself and state your intentions."
Kethril activated the translation matrix that the Concordance had developed by studying human languages. "Mars Colonial Authority, this is Senior Observer Kethril of the Galactic Concordance. We come in peace, seeking to establish formal contact with the human species. We mean you no harm."
Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then a different voice, older, filled with barely contained emotion.
"Galactic Concordance? Are you saying there are other intelligent species out there?"
"Yes," Kethril replied. "Over 8,000 at current count, and we would very much like to meet you."
The first face-to-face contact took place on Mars, in a specially constructed diplomatic facility that could accommodate both human atmospheric requirements and Veshkai aquatic environments. Kethril floated in a transparent tank of his native fluid, facing a delegation of 7 humans. The humans were smaller than their broadcasts had suggested. Most of them barely reached 2 meters in height. They wore suits that protected them from the Martian environment, their faces visible through transparent helmets. Their eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of fear and wonder that Kethril found deeply endearing.
"On behalf of the Galactic Concordance," Kethril said through his translator, "I welcome humanity to the community of sapient species."
The lead human, a female with silver hair and deep brown skin, stepped forward. "I am Secretary General Amara Okonkwo of the United Earth Coalition. On behalf of humanity, we don't really have a protocol for this."
Her voice wavered, and Kethril saw moisture gathering at the corners of her eyes. A human response to strong emotion, he had learned.
"We've been looking up at the stars for so long," Okonkwo continued, "wondering if anyone was out there, hoping. And now, you're here. You're really here."
"We are," Kethril confirmed, "and we bring an invitation. The Galactic Concordance offers humanity membership in our community, access to our knowledge, our technology, our trade networks, partnership and friendship, for as long as both our species endure."
One of the other humans, a younger male with pale skin and dark hair, stepped forward. His face was marked with suspicion. "What's the catch? What do you want from us?" "Admiral Chen," Okonkwo said warningly, but Kethril waved a tentacle in what he hoped was a calming gesture.
"A fair question, Admiral. The Concordance asks for nothing except adherence to certain basic principles. No unprovoked aggression against other member species. Participation in collective defense if required.
sharing of scientific discoveries for the benefit of all.
That's it? Chen asked, clearly skeptical. You have access to technology thousands of years ahead of ours, and you're offering to share it just because? Why?
Kethril considered the question carefully. Because, Admiral Chen, we have observed your species for some time now. We have seen your violence and your kindness, your cruelty and your compassion, your capacity for destruction and your capacity for creation.
He paused, his form shifting to convey sincerity.
We believe that humanity will be an asset to our community. Your adaptability, your determination, your refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds, these are rare qualities, valuable qualities. We would rather have you as friends than as enemies.
And if we refuse, Chen pressed, if we reject your invitation, then we withdraw, and we do not return unless invited. The choice is yours, Admiral. It has always been yours.
Secretary General Okonkwo held up a hand, silencing any further objections from Chen. Senior Observer Kethril, I have to ask, what did your Concordance's assessment of humanity reveal? What did your analysis tell you about us?
Kethril's form pulsed with what humans would later learn to recognize as amusement. Your species broke our most advanced artificial intelligence, Secretary General. The axiom, a consciousness that has successfully assessed over 8,000 species, has been processing your threat classification for cycles and has yet to produce a result.
The humans exchanged glances. We broke your AI? Okonkwo asked. How?
By being unpredictable, Kethril replied. By being contradictory. By being simultaneously the most dangerous and the most compassionate species we have ever encountered. You are chaos given form, Secretary General, and chaos cannot be calculated.
For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, to Kethril's surprise, Secretary General Okonkwo laughed. It was a warm sound, filled with genuine mirth.
I suppose that's as accurate a description of humanity as any I've ever heard, she said. Chaos given form. I think I like that.
The next 50 cycles saw humanity undergo a transformation unlike anything in their history.
Concordance technology flooded into human space. Medical advances eliminated diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. New power sources rendered fossil fuels obsolete. Faster-than-light travel became accessible to ordinary citizens, not just government expeditions.
But the exchange was not one-sided. Humanity brought something to the Concordance that the ancient alliance had lost over its 400,000 cycles of existence: vitality, energy, a willingness to take risks and push boundaries that more established species had forgotten.
Human artists created works that moved species who had not experienced emotion in millennia. Human musicians composed symphonies that resonated with beings who had no concept of auditory perception. Human philosophers asked questions that challenged assumptions the Concordance had never thought to question.
And human soldiers, when they were needed, fought with a ferocity that reminded the galaxy why predators should be respected.
The first test came 73 cycles after first contact. The Rekthal were a species that had been expelled from the Concordance 8,000 cycles earlier for violations of the non-aggression principles. They had retreated to the galactic rim, building their strength, waiting for an opportunity to strike. That opportunity came in the form of a border world called Keleth Prime, a peaceful planet home to the gentle, plant-based Kelethi people. The Rekthal fleet arrived without warning, overwhelming the minimal defensive forces and beginning a systematic extermination of the population.
The Concordance response was hampered by bureaucracy and distance. The nearest major fleet was 90 cycles away at maximum FTL velocity. By the time they arrived, the Kelethi would be extinct.
But humanity was closer.
Admiral Chen, now commanding the United Earth Coalition's first expeditionary fleet, received the distress call and made a decision that would define humanity's role in the galaxy for centuries to come.
All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We are moving to intercept the Rekthal fleet at Keleth Prime. I won't lie to you. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and operating without concordance authorization. If you don't want to come, I won't hold it against you, but those people are dying, and we're the only ones who can help them."
Not a single ship dropped out of formation.
The Battle of Keleth Prime was a nightmare.
The Vreckthal were a warrior species with millennia of combat experience. Their ships were heavily armored, their weapons devastating. The human fleet, 47 vessels against 300, should have been annihilated in the first exchange.
But humans did not fight like other species.
Their ships were smaller, faster, more maneuverable. Their tactics were unpredictable, chaotic, impossible to anticipate. They attacked from angles that no sane commander would consider, exploited weaknesses that no computer could calculate, and refused, absolutely refused to retreat, even when logic demanded it.
The battle lasted 17 hours.
When it was over, 29 human ships had been destroyed. Admiral Chen's flagship was drifting, its engines dead, its hull breached in dozens of locations. Over 4,000 human soldiers had died.
But the Vreckthal fleet was gone. Not one ship escaped, and 60 million Kelethi were still alive. The aftermath of Keleth Prime changed everything.
Species that had viewed humanity with suspicion now looked at them with respect, and, in some cases, awe. The Concordance Council formally recognized the human intervention as justified under the mutual defense provisions, even though humanity had technically violated protocol by acting without authorization.
"They came for us," the Kelethi ambassador told the council, his flower-like form trembling with emotion. "They didn't know us. They had no obligation to us. But they came. They bled. They died. For us. For strangers."
The ambassador's form bowed toward the human delegation.
"We will never forget." High Coordinator Yithmarin summoned Kethral to her private chambers after the council session.
"You were right about them," she admitted, her compound eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the observation window. "They are chaos, but they are also something more."
"They are human," Kethral replied simply.
It is the only word that adequately describes them.
"The axiom is still processing," Yithmarin said. 1,700 cycles, and still no threat classification. At this point, I suspect it never will produce one.
Perhaps that is appropriate, Kethral suggested. Humans cannot be classified. They can only be experienced.
Yithmarin was silent for a long moment. Then, "The Council is considering a proposal, full integration of humanity into the Concordance's highest decision-making bodies. No other species has achieved this status in less than 10,000 cycles of membership."
"I am not surprised," Kethral said. "Humans do not wait for permission to act. They do not ask for recognition. They simply do what they believe is right and deal with the consequences afterward."
"That is precisely what concerns me," Yithmarin admitted. "What happens when what they believe is right conflicts with what the Concordance believes is right?"
Kethral considered the question carefully. "Then, High Coordinator, we had better hope that we are not wrong, because the humans will not compromise their principles for anyone, not even us."
The crisis came 200 cycles after humanity's integration into the Concordance.
It began with a discovery, a signal from deep space, beyond the edge of explored territory. The signal was old, ancient, and it carried a warning. "We have translated the message," Terfon reported to the Emergency Council session. "It is from a species that existed 4 billion cycles ago, before the formation of most current civilizations, before the Concordance, before recorded history."
"What does it say?" demanded High Coordinator Yithmarin.
The display flickered, and a voice spoke, a voice that had been silent for eons, now resurrected through Concordance technology. "To all who hear this message, beware the void. We thought we could study it. We thought we could understand it. We were wrong. The void is not empty. The void is alive. And when it notices you, it consumes you. We are the last of our kind. We seal this message in hope that others will learn from our fate. Do not seek the void. Do not study the void. Do not draw its attention, or you will share our end.
The message ended. The chamber was silent. We have confirmed the signal's origin point, Terfin continued. It corresponds to a region of space known as the Dark Zone, an area that all Concordance vessels have avoided for 400,000 cycles due to unexplained disappearances.
What does this have to do with us? Asked Ambassador Kreth. If the zone has been avoided for all this time, surely...
We have detected movement, Terfin interrupted. Something in the Dark Zone has begun to expand, slowly but detectably. Based on current projections, it will reach the borders of Concordance space in approximately 9,000 cycles.
9,000 cycles is a long time, observed Representative Thelmock. Surely we have time to prepare.
The projection assumes constant expansion, Terfin said, but our observations suggest that the expansion accelerates as it encounters energy signatures. Inhabited star systems produce energy signatures. If the void follows its current path, it will encounter the populated systems of Sector 779 in approximately 40 cycles.
The chamber erupted. Sector 779 was human space.
Admiral Maya Chen, granddaughter of the legendary Admiral Chen, who had led the defense of Keleth Prime, stood on the bridge of the UEC Defiance, flagship of humanity's combined defense fleet. Through the view screen, she could see it, the edge of the void.
It was not what she had expected. There was no visible boundary, no clear demarcation between normal space and whatever lay beyond. Instead, there was simply absence, a region where stars should have been, but weren't. A darkness that was not merely the absence of light, but the absence of everything.
And it was moving.
Latest telemetry, Lieutenant? She asked.
The void's expansion rate has increased 17% since our arrival, Admiral. Lieutenant Commander Sarah O'Brien reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. It's responding to our energy signatures.
Curious, Chen murmured. It speeds up when it senses us. That would appear to be the case, Admiral.
Chen studied the darkness for a long moment. Behind her, the combined defense fleet waited. Over 2,000 vessels from humanity and 17 other concordant species. The largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy.
And it might not be enough. Admiral, came a voice from the communications station. We're receiving a transmission from the Concordance Council. High Coordinator Yithmarin wishes to speak with you directly.
Chen nodded. Put her through.
The holographic form of High Coordinator Yithmarin materialized on the bridge, her compound eyes reflecting emotions that Chen had learned to read over her years of service.
Admiral Chen, Yithmarin said, the Council has reached a decision. Given the threat posed by the void, the Concordance is recommending immediate evacuation of all systems in the projected expansion path. This includes the Sol system and all human inhabited worlds in Sector 779.
Chen's jaw tightened. You're asking us to abandon our home.
We are asking you to survive. The Axiom has calculated the probability of military success against the void at 0.03%. Those are not acceptable odds. With respect, High Coordinator, when has humanity ever cared about acceptable odds?
Yithmarin's form shifted, a gesture of frustration that Chen recognized from years of diplomatic interactions. Admiral, this is not a battle you can win. The void has consumed countless species across billions of cycles. It cannot be fought. It cannot be reasoned with. It can only be escaped.
And how long before it catches up with us? Chen asked. 9,000 cycles? 900? 9? The ancient message said if you draw its attention, it consumes you.
We have drawn its attention. Running will only delay the inevitable.
What would you have us do, Admiral? Throw your lives away in a futile gesture?
Chen smiled, a human expression that still unsettled many concordant species. Not a futile gesture, High Coordinator. A human gesture.
The Battle of the Void, as it would come to be known, began with a single human vessel. The UEC Hope, a small corvette, broke formation and accelerated toward the edge of the darkness. Its captain, a young officer named James Rodriguez.
Captain Rodriguez, Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channel. Are you sure about this?
Someone has to go first, Admiral, Rodriguez replied. Someone has to show them that we're not afraid.
The Hope crossed the threshold of the void and vanished.
For 37 seconds, there was nothing. No signal, no telemetry, no indication of what had happened to the small vessel and its crew of 23.
Then a transmission burst. Brief, fragmented, but unmistakable.
Admiral, we're still here. The void. It's not what we thought. It's not consuming us. It's...
The transmission cut off, but it was enough.
Analysis, Chen demanded.
The Hope transmitted for approximately 3 seconds before contact was lost, O'Brien reported. That's 3 seconds longer than any previous vessel has lasted, and the captain's words suggested the crew was still alive.
He said it's not consuming them, Chen murmured. What does that mean?
Unknown, Admiral, but if the Hope survived entry into the void, even briefly.
Chen made a decision. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. New orders. We're going in.
The combined defense fleet crossed the threshold of the void in a single coordinated wave.
What they found defied explanation.
The void was not empty. It was not a region of destruction or death. Instead, it was a membrane, a barrier between normal space and something else.
And on the other side of that membrane was a universe.
Not their universe, something different, something vast and strange and beautiful. A cosmos filled with stars that burned in colors that had no names, planets that hung suspended in formations that defied physics, and structures, massive, impossibly complex structures that suggested the presence of intelligence far beyond anything the Concordants had ever encountered.
Admiral, O'Brien breathed, are you seeing this? I'm seeing it, Chen replied. I don't believe it, but I'm seeing it.
The fleet drifted through the membrane, their shields absorbing the strange energies that permeated this alternate space. There was no attack, no assault, no sign of the consuming darkness that the ancient message had warned about.
Instead, there was contact.
A signal broadcast on frequencies that human technology could barely detect. A message transmitted in mathematical patterns that transcended language.
Welcome, the message said. We have been waiting for those who would come to us rather than flee.
The beings that inhabited the other side of the void were ancient beyond comprehension. They called themselves the Architects, and they had existed since the first moments after the birth of their universe, a universe that existed alongside the one the Concordants knew, separated by a membrane of dark energy that appeared from the outside as a region of absolute emptiness.
We are the last of our kind, the Architect's representative explained, its form shifting through configurations that human eyes could barely process. Our universe is dying, has been dying for billions of your cycles. We sought a way to preserve ourselves, and we found the membrane.
The void, Chen said. It's a doorway.
Yes, a doorway that appears from the other side as darkness, as annihilation. Those who came before you, the species that sent the warning, they touched the membrane and fled. They told others to fear it. And so for eons, the membrane has expanded, reaching towards sources of energy, hoping to find those brave enough to cross.
You've been looking for us, Chen realized, for someone willing to step through.
Willing to step through,
the architect confirmed. Willing to risk everything for the unknown, willing to embrace what others fear. We have waited 4 billion of your cycles for species like yours.
Species like ours?
Species that do not calculate the odds of survival. Species that leap before they look. Species that are chaos given form.
Chen felt a chill run through her, a chill of recognition.
You've been watching us, she said, since we first touched the membrane. We have watched all who touched the membrane. But you, your species, you are the first to cross, the first to seek understanding rather than flight, the first to be truly, magnificently, wonderfully unpredictable.
The architect's form shifted again, taking on a configuration that seemed almost joyful.
We have so much to share with you, Admiral Maya Chen of humanity. Knowledge, technology, the secrets of universes beyond counting. All we ask in return is friendship.
Chen smiled, a human expression that she suspected the architects would soon learn to appreciate.
I think we can manage that. When the combined defense fleet emerged from the void, they brought with them knowledge that would transform the galaxy.
The architect's technology was beyond anything the Concordance had imagined. Power sources that drew energy from the fabric of space-time itself, medical advances that rendered death itself optional, transportation systems that could cross galaxies in moments.
But more valuable than any technology was the truth. The void was not a threat, it was an opportunity, a doorway to allies who had waited billions of cycles for someone brave enough to knock. The Concordance Council convened in emergency session to receive Admiral Chen's report. Distinguished representatives, Chen began, standing before the assembled holograms of thousands of species. For 400,000 cycles, the Concordance has avoided the void out of fear. The ancient warning told you to flee, and you fled. And in fleeing, you denied yourselves the greatest allies the universe has ever known.
She paused, letting the weight of her words settle.
Humanity did not flee. We could not flee. The void was coming for us, and we had nowhere to run. So we did what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We charged forward. And we discovered that the darkness was not death, but a door.
The display behind her shifted, showing the wonders of the architect's realm, the impossible structures, the alien stars, the evidence of a civilization that had existed since the dawn of time. The architects offer us partnership, Chen continued. Not dominion, not exploitation, not the kind of calculated alliance that the Concordance is built upon. True partnership, the kind that can only exist between beings who have looked into the abyss together and refused to blink.
High Coordinator Yithmarin rose from her throne. Admiral Chen, the Concordance owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You have done what we could not do, faced our oldest fear and found it to be a friend in disguise.